anyone who's in education is, although it's a livable salary for the most, like I'm not complaining per se. I also know that if I reach,
What do you think about the negative sentiments that are being harbored against public schools?
what do I see 1, 3, 5 years down the road? And I think it's certainly opening doors to opportunities.
You take care of all students in a equal sort of a way. So I think TUSD serves a wide range of students, including English learners, foster youth, and students with disabilities. So how do you ensure equity and opportunity for all learners? Welcome to the podcast. Today we're joined by Eric Feinberg, principal of Hillview High School in Tustin Unified School District. With over 25 years in education, Eric is a leader in alternative and blended learning, and was named California's Alternative Education Principal of the Year in 2021. He's passionate about student centered learning, supporting educators, and integrating technology in meaningful ways. Eric, welcome so much to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you so much. So I think I'm going to kickstart with the first question. Eric, you've had such an incredible journey across elementary, middle, and high schools. Looking back, what experiences do you think shaped your approach to education leadership the most? And if you could reflect a little on why you joined education and if those reasons still exist.
Yeah, I think going across all different levels is really helpful, because you have the foundations. You can see where kids are coming from,
Mhm.
and then you also know where the end game is. My daughter, interestingly enough, the other day said that she said, "Dad, I noticed that as I have three girls." She said, "As you have gotten, progressed through your career, you seem to always go in the level of school that we are in."
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I said, that's really interesting. I never really thought of it that way. But yes, in a lot of ways, I have my career has kind of mirrored a lot of my girls' experiences in the different levels of school.
Mhm.
Um, I think the experiences that probably shaped me as an educator and as a leader, a lot of that came from being younger with my family, and my mom. I was a camp counselor since I was 13, and I was always spent my summers with kids. But then my career was always going to be an actuary.
Mhm.
And one day, while I was getting ready for to go back to school for my junior year, my mom asked me, like, "Eric, you continue to hang around and do things with kids, but you're saying you don't want to do that as a career for the rest of your life. That's interesting." And then she
Mhm.
left it there for me to think about.
Mhm.
Like, smart mom. And and I did. I realized, like, that's not where my passion was. My passion wasn't with making, and really it was about making money,
Mhm.
um, and having that as the driving force. It was really about making a difference.
Mhm.
And that really changed things. I immediately, when I got back, changed my major, started working at UCI at their day treatment program and learning and growing, and it changed my entire path. And I think that was a critical piece. And
Mhm.
I think it shaped me as a leader in being open
Yeah.
and willing to listen and hear and shift.
Yeah.
Uh, so and it definitely had a profound impact, and it's helped me to live the dream. I'm living the dream.
That is so nice for me to know, and I think your mother did have a very great impact, and I think I loved where she just left it off for you to think of, because I think when it's spoon fed to the child, it does not really stick well. But then I think it had a lot of greater impact when it came from you. So yeah, I think that sounds really incredible. You're also a recognized leader as an alternative in the alternative education sector. So, what do you think are the most critical elements for creating successful non-traditional learning environments?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think there's three critical areas. I
Mhm.
think if you're going to be in an alternative, you have to be flexible. So
Mhm.
your setting has to be flexible. It has to be innovative. And then you're also going to need support.
Mhm.
Um, you're from a district level. So if you're in a public school system, you're going to need to have that support. And so I think when, just kind of digging a little deeper with the flexibility, it can't be a rigid system. It's got to be a system that adjusts and adapts to the student and their needs. That's the whole idea of an alternative. It's an alternative to the norm, to what we typically do. And I think that's going to be critical, having that flexible lens. It's also got to be innovative.
Mhm.
If it's already was done and it didn't work,
Mhm.
then you don't want to keep doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the definition of insanity, continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You're not going to.
Mm.
And so I think that's a big piece of it is having that mindset of innovation and looking to what other people are doing that are having success, listening to your students, your staff, um, and trying things and not being afraid to fail. And then with that, having the support to do that. So I've been blessed in Tustin Unified. I have a really supportive, the board is super supportive of our alternative programs. And then my direct supervisors, leadership, superintendent, assistant superintendents, have been very supportive of us taking risks and
Mhm.
doing something different. And so, we started prior to Hillview, I was at Tustin Connect, and which was a independent study um, school
Mhm.
um, that is virtual and in person. So it's a hybrid model.
Mhm.
That school was developed in 2015.
Mhm.
That's 5 years before we hit COVID. They
Mhm.
were already thinking of alternative ways to support students. So it's great to be able to work for a district and have that support. And it was part of the reason why I came to Tustin.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so I think from what I'm hearing, we are talking about a lot of risk taking. We're talking about new ways and methods and being a lot innovative. Could you give me an example of what do you mean by being innovative, or like one strategy that was being used in the past and then that was not working out for the kids, and then you strategize something new?
Yeah. I think when you're talking about innovation and doing things a little differently, I think there's a lot of different paths and ways to go. And I think for us, at Tustin Connect, um, I think having flexibility with the requirement, I'll give you an example, is we used to have students, we used to do a advisory time when the students would come as a group. So you'd have 30 kids and you talk about announcements and connect with the students and have an opportunity to discuss with them. And they were required to do it for once a week.
Mhm.
And we looked at it was it was okay, but when we were doing it in a group, even if we had like three different options for kids and it was a group of 10, it was still too large. And we noticed that we weren't having the desired outcomes. And so we said, well, what can we do differently? And we looked it actually I was doing a WASP visit at another site, and they were doing their connections and meetings one-on-one.
Mhm.
So I came back and said, okay, we want this. We want these deep connections. What do you think about one-on-one? Well,
Mhm.
that's going to require them to put a lot more work in,
Yeah.
a lot more time,
Mhm.
rather than one meeting. You're asking people to do it every day.
Yeah.
And so it was recognizing and seeing the value of doing that,
Yeah.
trying it out, and then seeing the results and saying, oh my gosh, it's time well spent.
Mhm.
So that's where it's being innovative in trying something different. We talk about it in Tustin as doing a pilot. A
Mhm.
pilot lets you try something without being committed
Mhm.
forever.
Mhm.
Um, and it also lowers the stress level. I think sometimes as teachers, they work so hard to do what's right. They get worried,
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, if I try this and it works, then I'm committed to it forever.
Right.
And and what if I don't think it's going to work?
Mhm.
Uh, or what if my principal likes it, but it doesn't work for me?
Mhm.
It, making it a pilot, you're not committing to any,
Yeah.
long term, but
Mm.
also you're lowering that stress level and letting people try.
Yeah.
So that's just one example of many
Yeah.
different that we did, but it's an easy one, but
Mm.
really a significant impact.
Yeah.
It's as we all know, it's about the connections and
Right.
about the relationships. And there's no that one-on-one, you get to know kids so well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that personal connect is the key when it comes to, connecting with students, especially. So I think my next question is somewhat related to that. As a principal, how do you ensure that each child feels seen, and how do you connect with each kid personally?
Yeah, I think part of it is being in an alternative setting, you
Mm.
have smaller numbers and you
Mm.
need to lean into that.
Yeah.
You need to lean into the idea of with smaller numbers, I can do more.
Mm.
And spending time, we spend time on the things that are most important. And
Yeah.
if relationships are most important, then we need to be spending time with it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it needs to come from a genuine place.
Mm.
I've seen different strategies. One of the things is, learn every student's name.
Mm.
And that's great.
Yeah.
If you know every student's name because you studied the yearbook,
Yeah.
you don't know every student. You may
Mm.
know their name, and that's great,
Mm.
but know their story and understand their story. And if
Mm.
you're connecting to students in that way, that
Mm.
makes all the difference. And
Mm.
so, knowing that Stephen or Sarah has specific needs that, I'll give you we had one student was really nervous about volunteering for a program,
Mm.
and I asked him how to go
Mm.
today. Like,
Yeah.
how was the program? How'd it go? And he goes, it was awesome. I loved it. I think I'm going to apply. They were serving ice cream at Baskin Robbins. He's
Yeah.
like, I think now I'm also going to apply to Baskin Robbins.
Yeah.
Well, no, in my mind, I'm going to circle back with him. I'm
Mm.
also going to talk with the counselor and say, hey, Ray's looking at applying to Baskin Robbins. Will you follow up with him? So even if I'm doing it, I know, and then I'm going to circle back with him. So I think it's taking that time for that individualized connection is super important. It
I
makes all the
mean, yeah, connecting that deeply with a child and then, just paying that attention in itself, I think makes a lot of difference. Another question when you were speaking about how teachers may sometimes be a little hesitant around changes. Um, how you are very heavily invested in teacher group. So how do you support your educators to embrace innovation while managing demands of the classroom?
I think it's removing barriers.
Okay.
So it's my job to remove the barriers that
Mm.
prevent them from being able to do the innovative, important practices, and then
Mm.
also giving them the resources.
Mm.
So part of the barriers maybe they don't know,
Mm.
which is a hard thing to admit. Like, I don't know how to to do a certain thing or how to address a certain deficit that I'm seeing within my students.
Mm.
Um, and so giving them the resources, pulling the resources together for them, and
Mm.
then also giving them the time. One of the major barriers is time.
Mm.
Uh, and then also, like, I can't motivate my students. Well, one of the bears may be I don't have I can't spend $30 a day on Starbucks cards or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, it's finding the resources and the motivators that may not cost anything, or that if they do, getting donations
Mm.
for the students. So again, I think for us as leaders, it's removing the barriers for the teachers and providing them the resources they need to be successful. I
Mhm.
think combining those two things really set teachers up for success.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think creating that sort of an understanding environment, even for the teachers, I think it helps a lot. That's great. I also would love to know what do you think is one of the most common, well-intentioned way that leaders try to support their teachers, but it just ends up becoming a little counterproductive and it just adds on to the stress that teachers may have.
Yeah. Well, I think probably asking my teachers would be the best. I have my own thoughts, but right, they probably know better than me. They may say something different, but I think one of the things, we've really pushed hard and rightfully so with PLCs, professional learning communities, and working to create the time to meet together. I think where we add stress is that we provide or we require these data protocols and we ask teachers to collect data and things like that. I think where we sometimes fall and add stress is we collect the data, but we don't support on the action plan. And
Mhm,
so all they're doing is collecting data, getting results, but
mhm,
there's not the support for the next steps, which is intervention. And how do I intervene? I think especially in the high school, we're seeing more and more kids that don't have the basic skills.
mhm,
Well, high school teachers didn't di- didn't initially, the expectation wasn't for them to do some of those basic skills.
mhm,
And so now we're asking teachers, if your kids don't know how to read, what are you going to do? If
mhm,
their literacy skills are at like second or third grade level, what are you going to do? Well, it's giving them the resources. So they've got to know how to do it, whether it's putting the content into an AI generator and lowering the reading level,
mhm.
so they can access the content. So
Yeah.
they're able to work on those critical thinking skills that are required of juniors and senior and high school students, but they
Mhm,
don't have the literacy skills to be able to read a text at their level. They've
mhm,
got to be able to learn the skills though. So it's talking through those strategies rather than just say, okay, well, your kids are at a level one
mhm,
and they retest in a 6 month in 3 months or 2 months, and they're still level one because we didn't give them the strategies that are going to get them
yeah.
to improve skills. And so
Mhm,
I think sometimes we focus so much on the data, we
mhm,
miss out on the instructional piece and what to do. And it causes a lot of stress because
mhm,
they're not going to grow
mhm,
if we're not giving them the instruction that they need to show the growth. So
mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I also heard the whole AI thing in between.
Hmm.
So, you transitioned an entire school fully to a virtual learning model and Tustin Connect. What do you think is the single biggest lesson that you've learned from that experience, which most schools who even went through the COVID learning may still not have figured out?
It's a great question. I think probably one of the biggest lessons learned is it's the little things that are going to prevent students from being successful. And when I say it's the little things, I think sometimes we take for granted that a student isn't doing their work in an online environment because they don't have reliable connection at home and they're embarrassed to say it.
Mhm,
Or they lost their charger and they don't have the money or they don't want to tell their parents.
mhm,
And so as a result, they don't have a charge device, and so they're not doing the work.
mhm,
Um, I think, especially for students that are working virtually,
yeah,
not having an environment
mhm,
that's quiet, that's conducive to learning, it's those little things. And if we're not explicitly talking those through and supporting students
mhm,
to identify those needs and then work through them, they're
mhm,
not going to be successful. And it's not because they don't want to be or because they're cognitively not able. It's the little things
mhm,
that prevent them from being successful. So I think, one of the things that we ask every single time when we meet with a student who's not making academic progress is it's the simple checklist. Do you have an reliable internet connection at home? Do you have a quiet place to work? Like
mhm,
these basic questions that we just assume everyone does, or we just say it's not our fault, it's not our problem.
mhm,
It may not be, but what is our problem is if our students aren't learning.
yeah,
So those other things we need to make our problem.
mhm,
And it's those little things that are going to undermine the success.
mhm. And I think looking at those tiny little things comes from a deep place of caring and understanding. So I think I'm really appreciative of that part. Another thing that I really want to talk about is the whole use of AI. So I think
Mm.
Tustin is actively piloting AI. In an alternative setting, is AI a game changer for personalizing learning for at-risk students? Or do you think it risks becoming another tool which widens the gap for students who are already struggling?
I think it's a critical tool that if we're not embracing, we're
Hmm.
doing a disservice to our students.
Yeah.
Um, I think we had a lesson learned with calculators back in the day. I may be aging myself, but we said, "Oh, you can't use a calculator in math because you'll never learn your math facts." And there's some truth to that, but the other truth is that a calculator is always with us, and it is a tool that we should be utilizing to help us and support us. AI is very much that. It is a critical tool, and I say oftentimes if your assignment can be done by AI, it
Hmm.
might not be a great assignment.
Hmm.
Maybe something you want to think about. Are the careers that our students that we're preparing them for, in most parts, probably don't exist yet.
Hmm.
If they don't, but what I can tell you and what I do wholeheartedly believe is that it will incorporate AI on some level at all of our jobs. And if we don't teach our students how to utilize AI effectively, then we're doing a disservice to them. They are not going to be prepared to work in the workforce that's being created now. It's moving super quickly, and it is, I mean, I use it. I use AI all the time,
Yeah.
but it's because I use it, I'm learning to use
Hmm.
it better all the time. But it is an incredible resource. And I think some of the stuff like that school AI has done in the bots and being able to create tutors,
Hmm.
that system is unbelievable. It's a game changer.
Hmm.
And it's not like it's anyone can use it, anyone can access it if teachers know how,
Hmm.
and can really level the playing field for students that can't afford a tutor.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
This is a tutor in many, many ways. And it's a great equalizer if used appropriately.
Hmm.
The other part is that students know about it. Some students whose families may not use it or know as much about it,
Mhm.
um, they don't access it. And
Hmm.
so if you're talking about equity, equity is teaching them about it and how to use it right.
Hmm.
That is being responsible. And I also think it's doing a service to the students to show them. I was with a student the other day,
Mhm.
and he was doing a class in photography, and it was asking him questions about name two photographers, their skills, and their influences.
Mhm.
And he's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know photographers.
Hmm.
And then I talked to him about, okay, well, go on to ChatGPT and you can learn about them. And then you can pick the ones that you want. And so he did.
Hmm.
If he didn't utilize that tool,
Hmm.
he would have no idea where to start.
Mhm.
And the expectation was that kids did, and
Hmm.
that they would like Google it, right? Well, now ChatGPT, School AI, all of these, like take that to a whole nother level of skill set. But it's our job to show them how it can be used. And then the next question is, well, why do you care?
Hmm.
Why do you care what their skills are? Why do you care what their influences are? Well, so that you can appreciate the medium better, so that you in turn can build your knowledge and depth and growth in that area. Like these are all skills that you can do, and the ability like that would have taken forever for us. And we would have had to rely on someone else to
Hmm.
feed us information. Now you can get it like that. So
Mhm.
so AI is incredible, and I
Mhm.
think as educators we have to embrace it
Hmm.
and utilize it and lean into it because it is, I think, a great equalizer.
Hmm. And I think AI has become the new reality. So I think it is better if we accept and learn how to use it in a better way. When you were talking about the whole AI piece, you also mentioned equity. So I'd love to know how do you take care of all students in a equal sort of a way? So I think TUSD serves a wide range of students, including English learners, foster youth, and students with disabilities. So how do you ensure equity and opportunity for all learners?
So I think what's super important is that we recognize that equal is not equity.
Mm.
That giving everything to everybody the same is not equity. It's
Mm.
giving students what they need to be
Mm.
successful. And
Mm.
that looks different for everybody. And
Yeah.
it is not a scorecard, and
Yeah.
success is not finite.
Mm.
And I think I love sports, and one of the things that's super interesting is to me is cross country.
Mhm.
A runner,
Yeah.
but the sport of cross country, it's about your team and getting everyone across the line.
Mhm.
And I think it's a lesson learned for all of us when it comes in education is that we need to look at to our left and to our right, and we
Mm.
need to grow and build and support others to get across the line. And for some of us, we could do the race backwards and we would be fine. And some of us need a helping hand. They need someone sitting next to them,
Mhm.
coaching them, encouraging them, telling them not to give up. And I think that's what equity is. And I
Mhm.
think that's what we need to do, especially in alternative settings, but across everywhere,
Yeah.
is recognizing what someone needs to be successful, whether
Mhm.
that's an encouraging word, whether that means a bus pass so that they can get to school, whether it means breakfast and lunch provided so that they're not thinking about the pit in their stomach because they're hungry and instead can focus on learning. Um, or it's accessing the access to AI and
Yeah.
internet so that they can do the work. Or like I said earlier, is they don't have the literacy skills as a high school student. So giving them the content that is at their level so they can do the higher level thinking skills so that they develop the skills that aren't restricted or limited by
Mhm.
their earlier literacy struggles, that they can still think,
Mhm.
and giving them the tools and skills to be able to show that and develop those skills while we're supporting them, that's equity
Mhm.
in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that was put beautifully well. So moving on to the last question from my side. Looking ahead, what do you think is your vision for Hillview High School and USD over the next 5 years, especially in terms of innovation, student achievement, and community engagement?
Yeah, I think it's part of the process. I just became principal of Hillview this year, and it was a wonderful honor and super exciting for me. And I think it was also an opportunity of reflection when I was going through the interview process. Part of that was what do I see 1, 3, 5 years down the road, and I think it's certainly opening doors to opportunities. I think in a continuation school in an alternative setting, oftentimes because of early struggles, students don't have opportunities, that many of the opportunities have been closed to them because they didn't get the grades initially in high school. And so I think offering students opening opportunities for them is a role and a responsibility of a continuation school, and I think of schools overall, but especially a continuation. So I would see in 5 years that that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is pathways to careers. I think it's our responsibility to help students identify what they may want to do. And so exposing them, I think um, with the explosion of CTE pathways, our district has done a great job of embracing CTE pathways. And so we've started that. We have our first pathway here. And our students take an entrepreneurial class through a local community college to earn college credits. So I think creating those pathways, and then the other one is just creating community, like having that safe place. I think the common theme that I see oftentimes, I've seen here and in my previous school, is just a safe place to learn. That
Mm.
community, that strong, tight community, critical.
I mean, sounds like a very wholesome and a solid plan. So we wish you all the best for that. So I
Thank
think
you.
that was all the questions that I had from my end. We do this little segment where we have the previous leader of the previous podcast ask a question to the next one. So the question that has come up for you is, what do you think about the negative sentiments that are being harbored against public schools?
I think it's really it's a hard thing to swallow. I think it's easy to judge
Mm,
and to comment on things from afar
mm,
without being in the trenches. And I think it's really hurtful. I
mm,
think you have the people, anyone who's in education has, although it's a livable salary for the most, like I'm not complaining per se. I also know that if I reach the success level that I would be compensated much higher if I was in a different industry because teachers don't generate and educators don't generate direct income.
mhm,
So as a result, we don't get paid like we do.
mhm,
And so, but we get paid in many different ways, way more than any money that we could ever get. Um, but I think when people say those hurtful things and when they say those really negative things, it's a gut punch. And it's super hurtful and I think oftentimes is inaccurate.
mm,
Like in every industry, we have our less than outstanding people. I mean, every industry has that. Um, but we are doing an amazing job, and our country is the only country that I'm aware of, well, it's very few that teach everybody. We're working and we're teaching everybody regardless. And that's a big challenge.
yeah,
And it's hard being a kid
mm,
uh, these days. And as a result, it's hard to teach
mm,
kids. And educators are great people. And when these negative things come out, it's a gut punch. And I feel that, it's rough. And I hope that our leadership and is able to shine a light on the great things that are happening, just like the amazing kids that we have in our schools right now.
mm,
They're unbelievable. So they're just incredible. And I get to see it because I went to a breakfast today where we were celebrating, one student from every school. They do this on a monthly basis, and you just remind you
mm,
the kids are amazing. That has not changed. Unfortunately, we were just focusing. The press comes to the one, not the press as a group, but the attention gets brought to the negative oftentimes when
yeah.
it is we have great kids. So
I just hope these people someday see how incredible these kids are and then start focusing on the good things. So, yeah, I think that was pretty much it from my end. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think I had an incredible session with you. And yeah, I think we'll stay in touch. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information about TomoClub, visit TomoClub or follow us on our socials. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.